those kind words, and I know you've got another commitment, so I don't want when you leave when you need to go. So thank you so much, and you can obviously tell the influence a coach has, and all of you have had coaches in your lives, and I was so blessed. I had great coaches. I mean, all the way through from when I was a little kid. I remember Coach De Leon. I was in Pee Wee football. He's a great man. He loved us, and he encouraged me when I was playing Pee Wee football all the way through. I had great coaches, and pinnacle of that was here at A&M though with Coach Register and Coach Slocum, and those men really cared about us as players. And it's a funny thing. I just say this quickly, and we're going to get rolling because I know everybody's short on time. But people want wins in football in all games, right? And particularly, Texas A&M, we want all the teams to win. And but I'll tell you a funny thing on the inside of that as a player, you don't play for the fans. That may sound weird to you or odd to you, but when you're playing football out there on Kyle Field, you're really not playing for the fans. It's exciting, but what causes you to play is you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself, and you're part of this team, and what causes you to want to play so well is you feel like the coaches really love you. That may sound so weird to you, but when those coaches really care about you, and at Coach Register, I knew he loved me. And man, I never wanted to go out and disappoint Coach Register, ever. Never wanted to disappoint Coach Slocum, ever. I never wanted to come off the field like, man, you didn't quite give your whole 110% for that. I didn't want to disappoint either one of those guys, ever. Never have. Still don't want today. I never want to disappoint him. It matters how you care about people to get optimum results. Results don't come because you focus on winning. In fact, I'd say negative results come when you focus on winning. It's about the process and about the team. We thought, rather than just sit here and tell you our story, and we're going to roll through this, our daughter, Lindsay, she actually went to USC out in California, loves the Aggies. We thought she'd go here. She ended up being called out to California. She went to USC, and the reason she went there, she wanted to be kind of in the entertainment world, and so she worked for E! News, part of NBC. And so she's a reporter. She does that now out of Nashville, and we thought it would be kind of cool. She could come up and just ask us some questions, and we would kind of give some responses to some questions. So we're going to let our daughter, Lindsay, come up here, and our other daughter, Amanda Grace, is here as well. So we're glad both of you are here. So come on up, Lindsay, we'll do this.
They gave me these questions, but I might throw a curveball in.
Okay.
Okay, how did you both end up at A&M?
Let's see. We actually both graduated from Del Rio High School. We actually met in high school. And my mother and father were divorced when I was about 13, and we moved to Del Rio, and that's when I met Fred. We moved when I was about 15. That's when I met Fred. And my stepdad was a really wonderful man, and my mother remarried, and he was a big Aggie. And he was in the Corps, class of 54, and he used to sing Corps songs at our dinner table, but I didn't know that he had changed the words until I got to A&M, and I'm like, well, that's not what he sang. I'm thankful that he changed the words once I realized what the real words were. But he brought me to Texas A&M my junior year of high school, and he brought me to a yell practice, and I fell in love. And I wanted to get here as quick as I could. I came here right after graduating from high school. I came right here that very next summer. I had started summer school. So I'm Aggie through and through, maroon blood.
Yeah, so I grew up in Delaware. My dad was a pastor, a minister, and my mother was a nurse, and we lived on the border of Mexico. And so I had no business background, zero. I didn't really know anything about the business world, but my brother and I both were real active in sports and played every sport. And my brother ended up going to Baylor, and I figured I would go to Baylor and play for Coach Taft at Baylor. And Susan, though, we were dating, and she was going to Texas A&M, and I was really indecisive about what I was going to do. And at the last minute, I came up here and I met Coach Ballard. Some of you may remember Coach Ballard, and I remember going to his office and he was smoking a pipe, and he said, well, Fred, you can come up here and walk on with our team. I'd never heard the term walk on. I had no idea what that was, but it sounded like, well, my girlfriend was going to Texas A&M, and I'll just come up and be a walk on. I don't know what that means, but I'll come in with freshman class and I'll be one of those guys. And I found out real quick what a walk on was, and I was at Texas A&M. The scholarship athletes wore maroon jerseys, and the walk-ons wore green jerseys at that time. And I always remembered how much I hated that green jersey, and still don't like green very much for that reason. So it was not, what I would have ever, thought would have happened, but I'm so thankful it did. And as Coach Slocum said, it was a battle kind of going through that process, but it worked out really well, so I'm thankful for it. I forgot to mention somebody I want to really thank, and that's Dr. Jones over here. Eli Jones came. Thank you, Dr. Jones. He leads the Mays Business School over there, doing a phenomenal job, and just so thank you for being here. Yes, sir.
Dad, how did you end up in the real estate industry, and what led you to create Caldwell Companies?
Yeah, so and like some of you talked about today, getting out of grad school, in my case, I didn't go through the real estate program, but I worked for two real estate professors, Dr. Haney and Dr. Eder. I was a graduate assistant. I was a football player. I was like Miranda. I graduated in 4 years with a degree in accounting, and after 4 years of accounting, the only thing I knew was there was one thing I would never be, and that was an accountant. I was like, I could never do that. But I did 4 years of it because you just can't change. When you're playing sports here, you're just in a real narrow little band, and you can't change. You don't have any flexibility. So I just got through that degree as fast as I could, got done with it, and I was like, now what? I'm going to play my 5th year. And so I ended up going to grad school, and I went and met with Dr. Eder, and I wouldn't tell him. He didn't know I was a football player, and I wouldn't tell him. It's a funny story. And I just said I got all these hours. I couldn't take classes, and he could not ever figure it out. And it took him a while, and then he realized why I couldn't, because I had practice and all this stuff. And so he created this little custom schedule. So I got an MS in finance. But when I graduated, all my friends and peers were going to work for banks and consulting firms and all that kind of stuff. And weird thing, Susan's father owned a home building business and land development company in Houston. That's what they did. And long story short, I said, well, we're going to get married. We'll do that. And I met with one of the builders. And so I went into the home building business, of all things, in 1983, which was at the pinnacle of what would become the Great Recession. Started in 1985. But, I'm so thankful that happened. I went through the 80s working for two different developers, a land developer and home builder, and then I worked for a commercial developer, and then started our firm in 1990. But going through the worst of times, Peter alluded to 2009, 2010 being hard, but really, from my perspective, that was a speed bump compared to the cliff we fell off of in 1985 through really 1993. I mean, it was just brutal. And but I learned so much for that. And in about 1990, I worked for a guy named Ben Reynolds, who was really a great investor and really a good developer. And I learned a lot from him. But I just had a passion and need to kind of do things differently. Coach Slocum alluded to culture, and for me, I wanted to be in a different culture. And just at the end of the day, decided to start. And that's what we did. Took a leap.
So we saw where Caldwell Companies is today, but can you talk about the highs and lows along the journey to what led you to where you are today?
You might, Susan, tell a few stories because they're from your perspective. Might be. I'll mention a few highs and lows.
Okay. As I mentioned before, I was in bank marketing, and I had a career in that. Our first child was born, Amanda Grace, class of 11, our counselor among us. And I was pregnant with our second child, Lindsay. And I just realized as we were putting this event together, to be honest with you, I don't know why the light bulb never went off, but I was like, the company is older than Lindsay is. Like, she's never known life without Caldwell Companies. It's like the third sister. So I actually knew that I was pregnant, and that at that point I had COBRA insurance, and I wanted to stay home with the kids. So I decided to work part-time at the bank, and I tried to do anything I could to make extra money. So I painted T-shirts, I had garage sales, just so I could stay home with the kids while Fred started the business. And I don't really even remember how we got insurance, but we did get insurance. so after Cobra was over, and we were so broke. This is a true story. We shared a razor. Is that gross? But that's how broke we were. And I remember we were getting really tight on cash, and we were not going to be able to stay into the business if this one deal did not make. And so I was praying so hard that this deal would make, and I was just waiting at home with 2 babies, praying that Fred would call and say he made the deal. It's a long story, but basically, it was an old warehouse on 45 that he was going to sell to this gentleman. And when they got to the closing table, it was the wrong warehouse. It was on North 45, not South 45. And so my heart just dropped because I knew the business was over. But lo and behold, I think it's such a God story. The gentleman had such faith in Fred. He said, you know what? I'm going to take both of those buildings. And so that gave us enough cash to get through the next year or 2. And we didn't eat out very much. We had friends over. We were very creative on our entertainment. But there have been so many joys, too. I know we always kind of wanted more children. Now we kind of have 100. And I have so many sweet extended family members because of the Caldwell family. So that's been a real blessing for me.
Yeah, so for those of you that haven't done it, starting a business is a cool deal and it's a hard deal. And one of the lessons for me was, when you start with very little capital, it's a hard hill to climb, and that's where we were. It's like being back at a walk-on again at Texas A&M. It was a similar experience for me, and a great lesson learned for me too was don't do things without enough capital, and I learned that the hard way. And it took us a number of years. We started in the service business because that's what we could do at that point. We were a year and a half in, and we acquired our first assets. But the first couple of years were just tough sledding, and again, just so many times it looked like the airplane would crash, and just for whatever reason, we catch a gust of wind, and the good Lord kind of takes care of fools, and He did in our case. And so there's a lot of those kind of struggles and a lot of highs. One of the highs for us, I would say this is, and everybody on our investment side, and Sandy and Ronnie and all this, we've had families that have invested with us and been our partners for going on 30, now almost 30 years with us. One family in particular that I can't tell you what a unbelievable experience has been to go down the road with some families that just trust you with their investments and just trust you. And so that's one of the real highs, I think, is even going through, Peter and I will talk, went through an 09, 010 with unbelievable stuff. A low for us was we had a lender on the backside of the largest line, a $50 million line of credit. We had a lender go broke on us that we didn't even know in 2008, Peter. So 2008, we have a lender that was brought to the party by a different lender, by our lead lender. We had no idea. We didn't know those people. And the lender, usually the developer goes broke. In this case, the lender went broke, of all things. And we're like, and then they called us and said, we're going to stop funding your draws. And what that means is you're building a large project. You're dependent on the draws. In other words, you submit your payment request to the lender, and you say, hey, we need to draw $10,000 this week to pay these bills. And guess what? They said, we no longer are going to honor those draws. That was kind of a pivotal moment for us. And so, but I'll tell you, that again, just I think Peter would agree with this. It was a cool time, and that we we learned a lot about the FDIC and the new era, modern era. And the craziest thing of all, we found this lender that had been with this loan officer that had been with the lender that went broke, living off the grid in some little place in East Texas. And we'd get a private airplane, we'd fly into this little wooded airstrip, and this lady lived off the grid in East Texas, and she knew everything about that lender that had gone broke. The craziest story ever. And then, Peter gets a Senate Inquisition call. It was the craziest story ever. But long story short, they started funding our draws, and we got a very large discount on buying out their loan. So it worked out great. We were glad they went broke in the end. But that's the kind of stuff that happens in business, and I think a lesson from that, Lindsay, is just never giving up. Just you can't quit. You just have to persevere and fight through it, and some of that comes from athletics, and some of that's just you just can't quit. You have to persevere, and you have to work through it, and even when bad stuff happens, you've got to hang in there.
So many of our family dinners had plans that we would look through. Weekends involved looking at lots of pieces of dirt. You guys have been married for 33 years. So can you talk about what it's like to work with your spouse and the challenges and also maybe the blessings from that?
Maybe you should ask those people that are out there in the audience that work with us. I mean, for me, it's a blast. He's on one end of the office and I'm on the other, so we really don't see each other till 5 or 6 o'clock at night.
But then they go home and they sit in their office and they literally email each other until 9 o'clock. So
I think the challenge for the people that we work with is I might have one idea and Fred might have another idea, and he always wins, I'll say that. So we do always defer to Fred's decision, but it can be challenging for the people that we work with.
That is not true. That sounds good.
Well, Fred and I really enjoy building things together, which is crazy, and it's something that we really like to do. And as I said, I grew up sort of doing that as well. My dad would have house plans, and my parents were married. My stepfather and my mother were married 34 years, and they lived in 50 homes. And so I got to see a lot of floor plans. I went to a lot of selection meetings with my mom, and people would come and buy them, and we'd move in the garage next to door on the cul-de-sac. So in one cul-de-sac, we might live in every house on the cul-de-sac. So I really enjoyed the building part of it, and so to be able to get to do that and use marketing as well, I mean, for me, was a perfect combination. It can get really challenging working with your spouse, but just trying to take that home and not let all of that flare up at the office is really one of the biggest lessons.
And you'll read this if you read that book. One of the things I've said in there is, I think so many people miss the opportunity they have with their spouse because their spouses aren't engaged in what they do. It's been so good to have Susan engaged in what we do because she's a better read. She has a discernment of people that I'm sometimes blind to. She's a really good read of people, and she'll meet people, and I might be heading a certain direction with someone, and she'll say, I think I'd be a little careful. Because she sees something that sometimes I miss. So she has discernment in a lot of areas that I'm a little blind to. That's why, it's one of the reasons you get married is because you need help. You need a complement. And so she's been that for me. And it's just like I said in meetings, we don't always agree on stuff. And everybody we work with would guarantee that. I mean, we're sometimes polar opposite ends of things. But we work it out. And that's one thing I tell you about marriage is about working it out. The divorce rate in this country is unbelievably high, and it's because people quit. Bottom line, you just quit. That's why the divorce rate's high. And if you go into it with the idea, I'm not going to quit until death do us part, meaning the only way out of this is someone's dying, you know what? This divorce rate in this country would go down a whole bunch.
Wow, that's good. I'm single. Okay, so so my sister and I, whenever we would have guy friends come over, we'd always lose them to my dad, either in the office or upstairs in the game room, and they'd always be getting his advice. Or we get elusive Facebook messages wanting his email. So what are some of the top lessons you've learned through this journey?
Well, teamwork, getting around the right people, and that's a real easy cliche, but all these people that are here that we get to work with every day, I'm so fortunate I get to work with Todd, I'm fortunate I get to work with Ronnie and Sandy and everybody here, Clint and Miranda and everybody, Jessica, you're as good as your team, so, one of the things is just recruiting and looking for good team members, and, all the things we talked about at that earlier session, I think, what Coach Slocum said, don't go to work somewhere because they'll pay you the most money. If you heard, it's like a dumb speaker cliche, but if you heard anything today, remember this. But I'm telling you, what he said is exactly right. Don't go take a job for what they'll pay you right now, because it's going to make no difference long run. By the way, what somebody pays you in the next 5 years is going to have no bearing on your life, zero bearing on your life. But what will have bearing on your life is going to work someplace where you learn a whole lot. What he said is so accurate. Do not go take a job because of what somebody will pay you. I remember when I got out of grad school, I wrote Warren Buffett a letter. He was not as well known at that time, but I wrote him a letter and said, Mr. Buffett, I would love to come to work for you. I love investments and that kind of thing. And so I wrote him a letter and I said, I will come work to you for free for a year if you would please hire me. Now, I never heard back, but I really meant that. I mean, I would have lived in a gas station and wash cars on the weekends if I could have worked for Mr. Buffett for a year. I would have done that in a heartbeat. And that's my encouragement to you and I know you've got school debt and you got all that kind of stuff, but I would really focus on the right culture and where you can learn the most. That's like top of the list if I'm you sitting where you are today.
You've had some out-of-the-box deals and some unique stories. Can you share some unique stories along the journey?
Well, you were telling the one the other night. That's kind of funny.
The tractor. Yeah, the tractor.
Tractor story. You can tell that.
Yeah. So I remember Fred coming home, and we needed this little piece of land in front of one of our master plan communities, because it was really a hazard to actually turn and get into the community, because this piece of land had foliage all over it, and we needed just to have that one little piece of land cleared so we could have an open access to the master plan community. And the people who owned it lived way back in the woods, and we needed to make a deal for that one little tract of land. So Fred, I don't know, did Peter go on that journey with you as well? No? Okay. So Fred came back and he said, oh, we got the deal. Like, all I had to agree to was like buy her a tractor and like mow her grass. And he said, it's a such and such tractor. I can't remember the name of it. Do you remember? Anyway, so we looked up how much those tractors were. Oh my God, it was a fortune for that tractor. So that was funny. Just buying that tractor.
And the lesson in that was this. We thought we needed to write that lady a check, and they lived off the grid. Literally, they lived back in the woods. It's the weirdest deal ever. And they dressed alike, the mom and the daughters. The weirdest I've ever been in. They had a jukebox in the house playing Don Ho music. It was the strangest deal. But we went in there. We had to buy this corner, and we were Don Ho music. They were dressed alike in red and white polka dot deal. I remember that. So we went in there, and we're ready to write a big check. But the lesson in this is don't assume you know what somebody else needs. And we needed that tract of land. It was an issue for us in a big project, and they just happened to own it. And so we said, just got in the conversation. How you doing? Where you from? All that good stuff. Why do you like Don Ho music? And that was part of the deal too. They wanted to go to Hawaii, and so I listened to them, and she needed a tractor. She wanted a tractor, and so I said, well, we could maybe buy you a tractor. And seriously, we closed the deal. I bought them a tractor and paid enough money to go to Hawaii, and some other still. Oh, they wanted somebody to come over and mow their yard every so often, and it was like we probably spent half what we would have paid. The tractor was stupidly expensive, but it was what was important to them. And had we gone in there in our normal customary way and sent them letters and said, hey, we'll buy your land for X and all that stuff, it wouldn't have mattered to them, because she didn't want that. She wanted a tractor. So that's the lesson. Don't assume you know what somebody else wants. Ask them. Listen to them, and then give them what they want. Don't give them what you think they need. So there's a lot of stories like that. There's been some crazy ones over the years. Crazy serendipitous deals that you just can't ever imagine happening.
Can I add one?
Yeah.
Okay, so since we're in the grind years, and we probably will be for a while, what is a moment that you really remember where you're like, I don't know if I can keep going. I might throw the towel in.
Throw the towel in?
Come on.
You remember a time when? Yeah, early. Yeah, I'd say early when Susan, that thing Susan was talking about, we were out of money. I remember one time, and I will say this would be a learning too. I spent the first 6 years, I was never home. So first 6 years when Amanda, actually through her earliest years, I never was home. I worked all the time. I worked 7 days a week. I'd go to the office Monday through Saturday, and then I'd go to church Sunday morning. I'd go back to the office, and I'd come home Sunday night. And I did that for years and years and years. And the error in that was, number one, I missed her life growing up for a number of years. And number two, I thought it was dependent on me. And what I found over time was all these crazy things that happened didn't have anything to do with me so much, or the hours that I worked. It was less dependent on that. So, that was a lesson. But I remember one I remember one night sitting in the parking lot. It was late at night, probably 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. I was just worn out. And I remember sitting in my car thinking, if we can't get, to this certain spot, we're out of business. And I remember just being so unsettled about that. I don't know if quit would have ever come into it, but I was so unsettled about that. I remember I high-centered my car on the parking stop at 11 o'clock at night. Seriously, I couldn't even think where the heck I remember that. I was just wrung out, trying to get the company over the top, and I stuck my old car on a parking stop at 11 o'clock at night when no one's there. Those early years were hard. They were really hard, and but I think that's part of what makes you realize it's not dependent on you. That was a big finding for me. It's not dependent on me.
All right, we're wrapping up here. So how would you define success?
Well, for me, 33 years of marriage is success. Amanda and Lindsay are my best projects. So that's how I would define success. Also, having the opportunity really to mentor the young ladies at our office in many different aspects. And for us, marriage is a lifetime learning process. So when you choose your mate, choose carefully, choose a complement, and don't choose someone who's just like you, because two doing the same thing is not as good as a good balance. And honestly, I'm going to get on my mama soapbox a little bit because I know you guys are young and making decisions. But working at your marriage is just as hard and your family as it is working at your career. So as much as you're putting into your career, don't forget to put that much into your family and your relationships. Like, we're a little bit nerdy on the fact that we go to marriage retreats on a regular basis. We read marriage books. We really try to fill each other's emotional needs. They're our love buckets, basically. I mean, how can I put him first? How can I fill his love bucket? Rather than withdrawing it. When he's so beat up at the office, how can I build him up when he comes home? Those kind of things are what success looks like to me. And so I just want to encourage you, your career is important, but don't get so wrapped up in that you forget your family and everybody around you, your immediate folks that God gave you to care for.
Yeah, I think there's a whole lot of components to that, but one that comes to mind is there's a passage in the Bible that I really like, and it says, "Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth where rust and moth consume." And it goes on and says a little bit more about that, and then it says, "But instead store up for yourself treasures in heaven where rust and moth do not consume and thieves don't break in and steal," is the passage. What I like about that is, what the heck goes to heaven? There's nothing you carry in your hand that goes to heaven. The only thing that goes to heaven is people, souls. So, for me, a driving kind of life theology is people. What I love about the development business is we get to impact people's lives, and it matters. And it's so cool. I get to drive down the street of our communities. I'll never forget, I was walking my dog in the community we live in not long ago, and there's two dads out there with their kids, and there's the first day of school, and they're about to put their kids on the bus. And they're out there, and the dad's one dad on this house, and the other one in the next house, and they're taking pictures of one another and their daughters and all that. And I'm just walking by, walking the dog. And I thought, what a great return. That project was incredible financial success, but more importantly, the highest return was walking that dog down the street that day. That was the highest return in that development, for me, personally. those people were so excited to live in that community, and it was just like it was a living example of our vision of, man, their lives were made better. So, for me, that's a huge driver, and to me, success looks like that. And like I said earlier, I think success, money, and the things of this world, they go away. They just go away.
Just to add, as a kid, that's been really cool. I used to take my bouncy ball out to all these dirt projects and then be told, I think this could be a lake, and I saw this as this, and it's been cool to see the team just like create these awesome communities. Last question. We saw where Caldwell Companies is at now, but what do you foresee as the vision for the company moving forward?
Yeah, so we'll finish. So our company is what I call a generational company. What I mean by that is we never intend to ever sell the business. Just no intent. Some people, they build businesses and their goal is to sell them. And I've been in some CEO roundtables, and it's interesting sitting around these tables with other CEOs, and everyone talks about their exit strategy. And it gets to me, and I always say the same thing. I don't have an exit strategy because I don't plan to ever exit till God takes me home. And then our point is I want to hand the keys off to Peter and to Ronnie and Miranda and whoever's going to run this thing going forward, generational business. So no intent to ever sell. In terms of where we're going, we are very focused in the housing business and shelter, what we call the shelter business. So we really are focused on that, growing our land development business. We just started a home building business, which is we're actually announcing, publicly, this coming week, but that's focused in the active adult housing area, which we're the largest developer of that land product, and now we own a home building company. We hired a fellow that ran active adult for Pulte Del Webb, and we're really excited about that. I think that's going to be a major business, and excited about that. We've got a bunch of Aggies that are already starting to work there, and we're going to hire more Aggies into that business. So if you're interested in housing, that's a pretty cool business sector, and we will grow that business, I think, a lot. So, for us, it's about housing, shelter, multifamily projects that are on the boards to build, and those kind of things. We love that sector, but we own other companies in this real estate environment, and we have great people working. We own a brokerage company and a management company, and doing well. Hunter, the ace broker in our land brokerage area, and so really for us, it's about providing a platform for people to do well in their passion. Remember that PEG? So for me, a driving force is let's create a platform where people can pursue their passion and do incredibly well at that, helping make other people's lives better. And so my hope and goal for our company is that goes way, and it always is a weird goal. I had it when we started the business, that the company would survive me. And for a long time, I thought that means I'm going to have a really short life. But but that's our goal is that the company just has a long life, and we have Japanese partners that their company's 440 years old, and they're a great look at how you have a sustainable generational company. So that's been informative for us as well. So that's it, right? So it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much. I know it's been a long day, but thank you very much for your attention. Huh?